Easton Area Public Library. Today we'll imagine your story with Unbound, Basque fairy tales told in fractured stories. So, what is a fractured fairy tale? Well, fractured means to break apart. So it is a fairy tale that you break apart and then you take all the pieces and you put them back together in a funny or very different way so that it's telling the same story but in a different way that's a lot of fun to explore. You take the traditional common story and you retell it with humor or a dramatic change so that it's a little bit surprising and keeps you on the edge of your seat with just a little bit of change throughout. A fractured fairy tale is when you take the bones of a story and you dress it up in different clothes so that you're telling the same basic story, but a little bit differently each way. For instance, in The Princess Tales by Gail, Carson, you've got the story of Sleeping Beauty and a couple of others, but in this one it adds a few details about what the princess was like before she fell asleep, why she fell asleep, and what the prince was like before he woke her up. We have a large number of You Choose books like Hansel and Gretel, where as the story progresses, you get to decide what happens. So you can make them follow the traditional story, or you can see what happens if they don't follow the traditional story, and how it's similar and how it's different as they go through. This Hansel and Gretel actually seems to take place out in outer space. Check out Fiona and Friends, Fairy Tale Adventures. It's about two best friends who are in 3rd grade who together have found that by saying magic words, they can bring fairy tales to life in their playdates at recess each day. In our Other Side series, we have books like No Lie, I Acted Like a Beast, where it's telling the story of Beauty and the Beast, but from a very different perspective, where the Beast tries to argue that maybe he didn't do anything wrong. So it's a fun way to look at it and explore. The Frog Princess, as opposed to The Frog Prince, by Ed Baker, where he begins to mishmash different stories together, starting off with the basic Frog Prince story, where someone loses a golden ball and the frog comes and helps them out. In return, you have to do what the frog tells you to do so that the frog can become a prince. But in this case, it's the Frog Princess and they do a different adventure. In Hamster Princess by Ursula Vernon, you get the retelling of Sleeping Beauty. However, what would Sleeping Beauty be like if she was, first of all, a hamster? And second of all, she realized that nothing bad could happen to her until she turned 16. Well, in this one, Harriet the Hamster Princess decides to explore all of her options. Whatever After is a series about some characters who dive into the fairy tales but accidentally mess them up and how they're able to fix it as the story goes along. Ever After High by Shannon Hale, and The School of Good and Evil by Soman Chainani are both about when you have good and evil going to school each day just like you. However, to live out their fairy tales, they have to learn their lessons and what happens if the wrong characters go to the wrong school. You can also have retellings of other stories beside the classic fairy tales, such as Sisters Grimm, where instead of the Brothers Grimm recording fairy tales, it's the Sisters Grimms trying to survive them. You can have fractured mythology tales as well, such as The Goddess Girls by Joan Holub, where it's like high school or middle school, but not quite, where the different gods and goddesses are interacting in an everyday way, but with their superpowers. And not to be overlooked, we have The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, where it just takes the concept of the Greek gods, and what if they were alive today? How would they look? How would they act? And what would their kids be like? So it's fractured fairy tales can be a lot of fun, where you explore new ideas and it just enriches your imagination to share the fun with friends. So I hope that you imagine your story, Unbound, Tykes and Tyrants, Fractured Fairy Tales, this summer with Easton Area Public Library. Have a great day, everybody!